Before I start saying anything, I'll note that we notified the vendor about all the security issues found. A CVE has been registered for them, so we did it all properly in terms of notification. A few words about myself. I do reverse engineering, vulnerability research. I play the cat but set team, and here's my Telegram nickname, so you can ask questions to me direct if you want. A brief agenda for the presentation. So we'll start talking about the use of biometric terminals, what they're about, then talk about a specific device, and then I'll show you how the research has been done. A few words about biometric terminals. Perhaps many of you have already played with them. I suppose the difference from biometric readers is that the terminal not only reads your biometric data but also works with it. It verifies it itself. It offers you a verdict to allow you access or not. And also these terminals support multiple user authentication methods. So they can be used with electronic passes. Some terminals support QR codes. In some, you can type a password. So there are hybrid ways of user authentication that can be used there. On the whole, these terminals are used quite often in more or less secured locations. So when you need to gain access to some highly secured room, or they can also be installed just on regular turnstile checkpoints. The positives, that they provide quite a high identification accuracy, so you can detect users properly. It's also very convenient for users, so you don't have to carry some cards or memorize a password. Your face is your pass. And it's quite convenient for the user. And the efficiency is quite high. So, for the user not to spend the time on, finding their password, showing it, waiting for the response. It's just the terminal identifies a person quite fast. Of the negatives, one can mention an increased cost. So not every business will be happy about it. The risk of errors is a bit higher. It's still a device. It still runs on Linux, and so it's vulnerable to some vulnerabilities itself. In terms of pen testers, of course, we're interested in physical bypass ways, so how you can get through the door, making the terminal believe that we're a valid user, even if our face is not in the database. The next one is how to steal data. It's also quite obvious. So there's some database on the device which is synced with some global database, and we want to get some data from it. And the third way is to gain network access to use the device for the next attacks. So on the whole, I think it's quite obvious what kind of interest we have for these devices. Let's take a look at a specific device. It's a hybrid biometric access control terminal. Everything that I said previously applies to it. You can identify by the face. Also, you can connect it to the card reader. And it supports password entry, and it also supports QR codes. So you can show a QR code, and it'll read it, and you'll get access if it's configured. So for the user, you just approach it. You see two buttons on the screen. There are three lines. To get the keyboard up, you press any of these buttons, and you get the menu, and it'll ask you to enter a PIN code. The PIN code is user ID, and the users are created in the physical order. So you can actually enumerate some first numbers. It's likely that there will be a pin of the administrator. Then there's a key button, and you can enter the key. If you're an admin, you'll have a privileged menu. This menu also comes up if there's no admin on the device, so it's not assigned. The menu is then available to everyone. Here you have a normal, regular access. You can add attended users, do network setting, access control, and get the device info. No firmware update buttons from this menu are available. Even the admin can't do a lot out of the box. Let's now take a look at the device as a black box. From the attacker's point of view, everybody uses different black boxes. Let's see every approach possible. Let's start with the technical approach. If you open the device, you can see a lot of interfaces, and number 4 here is UART. It was found there. Well, it's quite easy to find it because all the tags are there. We tried all the testing interfaces, so we found this UART. Number 3 shows the flash drive. So if you get any problem, getting the firmware, it can always be taken out and read from. So we take the oscilloscope, connect to the UART, and for those who know, it is clear that there's some boot lock. This is a U-boot boot lock, but unfortunately you can't interact with this boot lock, and we can't send anything to the device. We can just take a look at the boot lock. It gives some leak of addresses, but actually they're not quite so interesting in terms of our purposes as an attacker. But looking a little bit further at the boot log, and taking also using some oscillographer more, we see that after the kernel has been loaded, the UART changes speed, and then some data from an unidentified protocol start flying about. We try to interact with the device, showing about, or sending about the same numbers, but it didn't respond, so it wasn't clear why this protocol. So we gave up on the idea of exploiting it in some way, because in real life you won't be able to get into a device that's installed somewhere. Perhaps you just won't be let near it. Then we started a more typical black box analysis. We scanned the ports, found the 4370 port. We Googled the vendor name. It turned out that it's a vendor for interaction with some such devices. And it turned out there's a guy on GitHub, good man on GitHub, who posted some unofficial documentation how to interact with this protocol. Also, there was a TUIA for 6668, but we didn't consider it as part of this research because it's a well-known service, but we wanted to look for something vendor-specific. The next thing that was of interest is the camera, because when I described the device, I said that it supported QR code reading. And there's an interesting subtlety here. So if you just use a scale inject quote 1 or 1 minus, it allows you bypassing the authentication. You get a user with which you can enter through this door. The terminal would consider that your access is allowed, and this works even if you. So when you're setting up a user, from the admin point of view. You assigned authentication methods, but you can just show the SQL injection QR code and something will happen. Also, it was found that if you pass a lot of data in the QR code, like a kilobyte of A's, for instance, the device will just wait a bit and reboot. And I'll explain later why this happens. Now let me show you how this looks. So I have this QR code printed out. I'll just show it to the device. It's being read, and then access is allowed. But my user doesn't have any QR code set up. So this QR code has just the usual SQL injection. So unfortunately, we couldn't find the firmware in public access. And then I remembered that I only like OSINT better than reverse engineer. That's a joke, of course. I actually don't like doing reverse engineering, but you can at least look for the name of the firmware. You can use some Googling tactics, but given the name of the firmware, you can find an official update. Of course, it's password protected, but one of the distributors has posted this PDF file without passwords, but the version was younger. But I was still interested in taking a look at what these updates contained. So this firmware that I managed to get in public access was 158, and in our case it was 1525, I think. So you can find an older firmware, but it helped us. The most interesting of the firmware file was the one where the contents of the firmware was listed in a hex code. It's just like Intel hex. It's just an encrypted file. It looks like we found a firmware, but we don't have a QR code for this. So failure. So then we decided to take a look at all the update files, and it turned out that there was some partial update. We just had some archive, an MTD block, where for a specific lib, and the binary there was standalone COM as the update, and it turned out this standalone COM is the binary that handles 4370, because I said that the update was never to be found, then it was most likely it was happening over 4370, and then yes, and it's exactly what we managed to find. This binary has this update feature, so 4370 is used to update firmware, but then it turned out this function is from some other library, so it wasn't clear how to get this function. And then I remembered that I grade OSINT, and it turned out that there's another great person who, in GitHub, mentioned the name of this function. And so I was able to get it. And this library wasn't even for the same architecture. It was from a different device, I think, from a different product line. But the function had the same name. And doing some reverse engineering, it turned out that this is really the function that does the unpacking. So for those of you who don't want to break the ice and do too much thinking, we just take the last 16 bytes that are in this encrypted file, add the size, that's small former bytes, get the key from this, and then use this key to pass the firmware. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't as perfect as we hoped. So it wasn't full firmware. Only some files were updated. And again, there was nothing really useful there. There were some binaries. Of course, it's quite useful, but you want to get the kernel, etc., the passwords, but they weren't there. So one could ask a question of how to get off this emotional swing. It's an easy way. Yes, this exactly is the way that I mentioned in the beginning. You can dump this flash drive. It's the BGA 153. There's a programmer for chip prop. You can buy it over the internet, dump the firmware, and find everything. Here you have the list of sections. It's in clear text, so if you are able to solder it off and do the dump, you can get this firmware without any OSINT research. But I mean, doing OSINT research is fun.
Главное только найти. В плане какого-то лута.
As to some loot from the flash drive, as far as pen testing is concerned, we managed to get credentials for the vendor use, so we couldn't get that for the root. And for the SSH with this user, I don't know whether it's available. Maybe it's open everywhere, and maybe this is this often just service access, so you can use this user to gain access. It's not privileged, but for instance it has a privilege to read the database, because the database is available for reading rather than writing, and you can use anything, find anything that database, user data. And if some user has authentication beyond biometrics, you can also use it to enter the door. Also, this allows doing services enumeration. If any of you have worked with some routers that are reasonably new, there are lots of services there, and most often they communicate through the same hub, and it's done exactly the same way here. So you have this main thing with HMI. When you get to this main, it goes to the hub, and the hub brokers the service to connect services. We found the push.com service. It's quite a cool service. That's is usually called the connect to the cloud service. So it's a client on the device that goes to a web server that the administrator will have assigned for them in the device settings. So the administrator can assign the web server that can be managed from this device. Also, you can note that for every service we have root privileges. Everything is launched from the root, so you don't even need to bring the privileges up. Now, about the targets that we have identified. The attack surface is about like this. So you can then look at the UART, what kind of protocol it is. But it may not be too interesting in terms of usage. Because, as I said, in real life, you'll hardly be able to get the cover of the device and gain physical access. The 6668 service, the TUIA, is not offering a lot of information, as I said. So I think the most exciting parts are 4370, some proprietary protocol, and push.com. The service that can be exploited to run an attack against the client. As to the ZK-TECO protocol, everything's available publicly. We can just take the documentation, implement our own client. The protocol is quite simple, actually. So there's a header plus payload. The payload depends on the command, on the instruction.
Алгоритм чек суммы тоже дан, вообще не надо.
Everything is quite simple.
Вопрос только
The only question is about authentication, for which password is needed. And here it gets quite curious, because for any command that you want to run the device, you need to know the password. This password is called COM key within the device from communication keep. Actually, authentication looks very much like with Mac. We send some command to the device that we want to connect. Some session ID comes back to us. These are just 2 bytes. We calculate the MAC based on the session ID, send it back. The server verifies, and after that we can run the commands. So of course it can all be intercepted over the network. If we are able to sniff the network, we will be able to get these packets. Also, with ComKey, turned out is everything is quite limited. So the max value is up to 1 million. So not too many possible options, and you can sniff the traffic. If you have have a dump of the authentication traffic, you can analyze it, and if you could do a network request quite often. You can brute force it. Also, if you're able to calculate compute the database, you can restore it from the traffic. So there are ways to bypass the authentication. Also, if the admin doesn't know about this 4370 capabilities, the value of this thing will be 0.
Дальше остается дело за...
Then what needs to be done else is to reverse engineer this handler. Everything is in the same function. The depth is not too high. You can, explore it all, taking a day or 2, understanding where all our data goes. And because all the documentation is available, it's easily mappable over the database. You just look for these 2 bytes, look at the documentation, you already have the context, what kind of command it is, you understand what should be happening with it. There are interesting commands in the protocol, for instance, for image downloads where there's no validation as such, a symbol to bypass the catalog. So basically, you're downloading a picture, an image, but you can download any file like this. For instance, you can use photos on the device, or you can download the picture that's generated from your biometric image. Or you can download the shadow and get the credits that can be brute forced. And there were several such bugs. Different handlers. We're downloading different files, but the essence was the same. System RAM was used, and so it was just normal command injection that was used here. Everything turned out to be quite simple, nothing super difficult. And there were lots of places like that. When it was already clear how it can be done with image reading. Also, the stack buffer overflow. Here's a standard example of implementation of similar protocols. If the size is used that came in with the user packet, then it's a citation lost. Same thing. The buffer gets overflown. There are no canaries here. And it was very easy to exploit the buffer overflow in the stack. Basically, 4370 looks like this. Wherever you look in any handler, where anything to do with the system or database queries was about, there were bugs. The next interesting thing was about Pushcom. Pushcom is a cool service in terms of the attack concept. You already need some more interesting access to try and exploit it. Or you need to do some art spoofing. So, in a word, you need to somehow make the device able to go to your server. And it's not the 4370 protocol, it's just a text protocol. You can use it to reverse engineering things to understand what's happening. So there are some settings, the settings of the cloud service, where you can add the address, the port, set some additional settings so that your device starts going to this service. And it turned out that this service is even more interesting because there's just a shell command there that does not shy off and accepts an argument that can be executed. You just attach a special handler, you insert the syntax for this shell command, and then you have it all. Also, some other bugs were found in this service that looked like the bugs that were present in the 4370. There are lots of commands that were overlapping. And it's all related to the fact that you can manage the device over the 4370 if you have direct network visibility, or you can set up it in such a way that it connects to the cloud and it can be managed from the cloud. So it was all quite funny, but the shell command was really something special. As to the QR code, we wanted to understand what kind of SQL injection we're dealing here with. Because if you have noted during the demo, what kind of data was being entered. The name, the PIN code, and I was curious whether we could get some data from the database, the passport or something else. It turned out that it was quite sad, only 20 bytes for input. And I didn't seem to have enough skills with SQL to think of something useful. There were only 20 bytes.
Также было довольно странное поведение.
There was also quite a strange behavior with the autocast.
Просто я тестировал, что вдруг будет больше 20 байт каким-то образом.
I was just testing. Maybe they would allow entering more than 20 bytes. I got some strange data, but 20 bytes was clearly not enough. As to the overflow, we show a huge QR code, the device gets rebooted. First I thought maybe it's some kernel level bug in the driver, but it turned out it was quite simple. They had some watchdog. If the camera is not responding for 3 seconds, the device will reboot. You can find it in the handler of getting data from the camera, which made us sad, because otherwise that would have been quite a cool bug. You just come with a QR code with some binary codes and the device gets hacked. That would be quite super. But everything turned out to be even simpler. We found a lot of bugs. We didn't register all the 24 bugs as separate CVEs, so we just put them in different categories. So there were less CVEs than 24. The bugs were quite diverse. Some of them were easier to exploit, others were more difficult. That depends on what you wanted. And perhaps my presentation wouldn't be complete without talking specifically about biometric. Can anything be done with a camera? You don't have a face of the person that should be allowed, but you want to do it. So here I'm showing with the camera how the camera identified me, what I was doing. I was covering my forehead, so covering half my face. Or for instance, when I put my hand on the nose, it wouldn't identify. But the coolest thing I was able to do is this. It's my black and white picture. So I'm showing it to the camera, and
Получается, что успех.
It turns out that access is granted. That was quite funny. Actually, it's all set-upable. The camera has quite a lot of settings. Perhaps you're not going to see everything, but
И внизу есть настройка проверять ЦОВК-диапазоне.
there's a detailed list of settings. And then at the bottom, you have this IR verification. So colleagues were prompting me to just add a lighter or a lamp, but I didn't try them. But it's also quite an interesting vector. Also, I know that there are silicon masks or gypsum and cardboard that can be used.
Например,
All these settings are in the database, and if you want to edit the database and you get access to the device, you can actually disable it.
все это реализовать. Что по итогу?
So, what's the bottom line? Here, I'm showing several chains for the attacker.
Стандартный из тех багов,
The standard of those bugs that have been found. For the physical access, we can show a QR code, we can show a picture of a person that we know exists in the database if the camera is set up properly that allows getting the physical access. As to the network access, everything depends on this COM key, whether you need to brute force it or not. If you need to do that, maybe it will be a higher risk for you to get noticed. If you don't need that, that may be a better thing. It all depends on what kind of RCE you want to do. You can rewrite some file or inject something in the library. Also, you can use SSH. And there's a cool vector coming up here. You get access through SSH to the database, get the data from there, and after that to run 4370. And admin access to the HMI device. For instance, you've learned how to enter using the admin credentials or took a picture of their face and use that to enter. You can set up access to some web,
то вы тоже получите.
and then you'll get an RCE or anything else you want.
Настройки камеры вы тоже можете.
And of course, you can change the settings of the camera. You can change the settings of the camera that will allow you to gain access by showing a black and white picture. So basically, we've achieved everything we wanted to. This is the recommendation slide.
В кодах используется.
It's important to note that
То есть
most likely separate networks are used. So it's quite a rare thing that direct network access is offered. They usually try to separate this network from the internet, so that defines some security context. Also, you need to change the COM key, set up the scanner settings,
пользователю
not use the QR code, but here your capabilities are limited because the camera will always be able to read the QR codes. I didn't find a way to disable it altogether. Also, you need to change the SSH default password. And of course, the best way is to do a run a firmware update. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I am happy to take any questions from the room or from the chatbot. I wanted to learn. You said you tried to unpack the update firmware, but did you try to load something your own? So as not to read the firmware by unsoldering people to use it. Yes, I got a question. It can be done because it's not signed. I just didn't want to do any equipment. No, it's just when I found the 4370 and I looked at it and I had the RCE before I got the firmware. So basically I was lucky. You don't even think to try and insert something into a firmware
По-моему, там даже особо...
update. But it's possible. There's no digital signature there. It's just an archive and can be encoded, decoded from the device.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Если система пропуска не подключена в открытую сеть, а на пропуске есть...
If the security system is not connected to the open network and it's only in the local network, it seems that it's a good way to protect it. Well, this terminal that I showed you, even if it didn't have any internet access, if we come with a QR code, it'll allow you access. And if you have a picture that it's instructed to allow, you can also be allowed
Рута на
get access to the terminal, to the root level access to the terminal, of course, will not be possible without the network access. Any more questions?
Вопрос в том, есть ли liveness проверка на устройствах.
The question is about liveness verification devices.
Но по сути...
So there's no such option in the camera settings, but the IR range support actually served this goal. But this liveness option is not there. If you read the vendor brochure attentively, you will find some mentions that it's possible, but I couldn't find it.
То есть...
The settings can be set up very differently. I, for instance, was able to set it up so that it will not even allow me if the lighting would change. You can set up the camera in such a way that it will be working very strictly. Hello. Have you tried replacing the video stream for the terminal?
У нас была такая...
We had this idea, and there's even a separate camera on the circuit board, but we didn't implement it. We had it in our plans, but we didn't do it.
Вопрос такой. Вот
My question
повышение...
regarding the local privilege upgrade methods from a non-root user to the root. Did you consider such opportunities? Yes. In this device as well. So as to get to the very top, we weren't looking at any local services. But in fact, I think considering that everything starts from root there, you can run limp EAS. It may find some ways, but we didn't look for it for this device. Because when everything starts from the root, you found the bug, and you don't need to get your privilege promoted. No more questions. Okay. I need to update. Okay, got that.
Есть проверка на живость. При проверке на живость можно...
Liveness verification.
Также будет на смартфоне. Я пытался...
Well, I tried to show it from the smartphone and the video where I'm just turning my face. And it didn't work for me in the IR range. So when you enable the IR range, the smartphone doesn't work.
Как бы со смартфоном тоже будет работать. Так, методы повышения привилегий на...
The privilege promotion ways to root, I've already explained that.
Обычного пользователя, в принципе, нет. То есть, если стандартный
For the strange standard user, if you take a look at the standard camera settings,
бывало, там, когда
it works quite fast.
что-то просто там встаю, например,
When I was, doing some things from standing up from the table, the camera would capture just part of my face, but it would still recognize me, so it works quite well. So if you don't enable IR or any harsh settings, it'll be able to identify are there any attacks possible for certain types of codes using F0. Well,
прикладывать, но
you can use the passcard, but I'm just a reverse engineer, so give me a piece of firmware, and I can only work at this level.
как так, что у них сок не было, который ваш трафик быстро спалит.
How's it that you have a SOC that showed your traffic? I don't know who you're talking about. I was doing it all in lab conditions. The device was connected to my own laptop, and I could use the COM key. I'm just saying that this attack is possible. It doesn't take a lot of time. But the colleagues who do pen tests said that in the network it can be a problem. But I was just doing it in a lab. I had direct access to the device. So I've got no more questions from the Telegram.
Так, все тогда?
It's all then. Thank you.